clave. Suena el bongo, hazme un tumbao, que el ritmo lo pongo yo.
Pops and the Rican.
Look at this dude. Look at the top of his head. Look at his lips.
Pops and
Hey everybody! This is the Pops and the Rican show, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm Pops,
And I'm the Rican.
and that means this is
The Pops and the Rican show. Put it together.
Yeah.
Put it together.
So today we are joined by the voodoo
The man
of technology. I don't know.
Nah.
It's some, I don't know, through the interwebs they got a little, like, I don't know if it's a seance they had or whatever, but now all of a sudden we've got the spirit, the embodiment, the likeness of the world famous Joel Byars.
Joel Byars.
Hey, we out here.
Yeah,
So-
what's going on, man?
Okay,
Thanks for having me, guys.
Sure, stop talking, man.
No, that's like, you gotta go. No, you gotta go. You gotta
Is that
go.
how he does it?
No, you gotta go. Hot breath. That's what you gotta do.
Yeah,
You gotta do like Snagglepuss, right?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
Snagglepuss.
But he always does that.
Hot breath.
He always does that thing.
Right.
Oh, is that the end of it?
Yes.
Okay,
Because first
well.
you gotta inhale hot breath, right?
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
you know
was just trying to make him feel at home.
Joel Byars. What's up, man?
So-
Great to have you on the show.
I'm excited.
Yeah, man.
So, we probably should do a little bit more of because there may be like two people in the whole universe that have not heard of Joel Byars. But Joel is a comedian out of the great state, the godly state of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Joel, I don't know if you know this, but I lived for a long time. I lived in Savannah, so.
Oh, yeah.
And I still have family in Georgia. My mom and dad, my brother still live out there.
That's like
in the middle of nowhere. So we're kind of like cousins.
That's like the
You know?
equivalent of saying, "Hey, I got a Puerto Rican friend too. I also got a black friend. Yeah, I'm from Georgia too as well, bro. So
We all know each other. Yeah, for sure.
right.
Savannah's a great town, though.
So Joel's a comic that is based in Atlanta, but he also is the host and personality behind Hot Breath, the podcast,
Yep.
the aura that everybody knows as the
telling
end
you.
all be all of comedy podcasts.
Comedy mastery. That's what I love about it.
And,
it's like there's so much, man. It's so dope. Yeah. So
I appreciate it, man.
I highly recommend all our listeners to go ahead and jump on your podcast. 'Cause I'm telling you, man, there's so much gold there. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, if you're looking to get some, education on the business of stand-up and all that, go ahead and subscribe to Hot Breath.
Yep.
And go back through all of those and listen to all of the back cases. They're not cases, are they? Yes. I thought it was in court again. Anyway, go to the episodes.
VHS.
Episodes. That's what he is.
Yeah.
VHS tapes and watch them. And it's like a master's class in
I'm
comedy.
telling you. Yep.
And then after you do that, you can come back and listen to us, and you go, well, hey, at
You
least
guys need to work on your
those guys know somebody that knows how to
Right.
talk about comedy
Right.
at least,
Right.
which is always nice. So,
But not only do you host the Hot Breath podcast, you also run classes, don't you, over there in Atlanta?
Yeah, in Atlanta, yeah, I do classes in person. I've also done online stuff with comics, and I've helped even people like with their speeches they have at corporate events and things. So there's an application to comedy that's beyond just like the stage is what I'm starting to really dive into a little bit more, and just trying to help people who aren't necessarily comedians, but kind of empowering them with like comedy skills, which I think everyone should at least try comedy for sure.
Yeah.
100%. But that's why it was all my the whole podcast, it's like you said, it's all just comedy education, because what I'm finding also is that it's not just comedians that listen to it, but actual just hardcore comedy fans that want to hear like the behind the scenes and kind of learn how the sausage is made. So there's a boom in comedy happening, and people are more curious about it than ever. And it just so happens that like this podcast kind of just started to coincide with like this comedy boom happening, and now it's almost 200 episodes now. So
hey, congratulations on that.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
that's some work right there, man. That's some work. What I like, dude, I trust. I know with the editing and all that. I know, bro, I know. But so with the work that you do there, what I liked about your podcast, not only is it audio, but it's also video, and you had some episodes where you were behind the scenes and checking out all these comedians that actually came off stage, and they were like like you're in the midst of the grind, and that's something that is very rare to see. And so I think that's pretty unique as well, is because you're seeing exactly what's happening. Like those type 5 minutes that you do as well, where you're like talking about writing and what to look forward to. Like you're in the car, really just like this is real life, and that is something that we want to bring out too as well. And as far as the attention to everybody else and saying this is the life of what you're trying to get into and what you're going for. And sometimes you're going to have to grind a little bit more than what it's not that easy. It's not just like an easy walk in the park. So it's good to see both the successful comedians that are in the game, but also comedians that are just grinding just like everybody else.
Oh, that's a good note, man. I'll incorporate more of those. It's tough to know like what people like in terms of, do they like the famous comics, or do they just like the people out on the grind open micers as well?
I feel like I have to say this because after Steve's just went through that whole montage of blowing smoke up your skirt. He really likes the fact that you get behind the scenes, but really what he wants to do is he kind of wants to be able to come into your house while you're sleeping and just kind of watch you sleep.
Steve's been a supporter since day one, man. He's one of the first people. It's cool. Steve kind of started like this snowball effect where like Steve was one of the first people to like reach out and really start to engage and be like, I like this episode because X, Y, and Z. Like he was one of the first people to really connect with me and be like, I love what you're doing. Please don't stop. This is why I love it. Like, and since then, like I get people reach out to me almost every day. From someone from Ireland just reached out to me. Like they just emailed me this morning, actually. So another comic told me like the show inspired him to start just doing comedy. So, but Steve, I got to give him credit. He was seriously like, that comes to mind. He may have been the first person who really reached out and was like, hey, you don't know me, but this is awesome. Keep doing it. And we've been in touch ever since. It really kind of started that new connection with my audience, and I appreciate it.
Man, see?
Well,
come on, Dennis. Come on, man.
And I got to tell you, I'm proud of the fact that he was able to make a connection for you and your audience, because he's not done any of that for me and my audience.
No.
I don't know why.
Because your audience can't hear, Dennis. They all have hearing aids. They can't hear.
Anyway, yeah, that's... So you guys have known each other for a long time. It's like, hey, I'm going to bust his chops just like the Rican.
I'm just saying, bro. I'm just saying, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
It's all good. It's all good.
So, Joel, let me ask you, when how long were you doing comedy before you decided, hey, I want to do a podcast about comedy?
The podcast, in August it'll be 4 years. So it started out just as 10 comics from Atlanta were in the finals of Last Comic Standing. I was like, oh, this is cool for the comedy scene. Let me just interview them. And I recorded all those episodes, released those, and then kind of took a little break trying to think, okay, that was season 1. Now what's season 2? But it ended up being just interview comics and learn from them. But it did all start with just, hey, let me create this time capsule of Atlanta comedy, and now it's just like Steve said, comedy mastery.
So you kind of got started on the podcast. How has it had an impact in your comedy? I mean, we can talk with a lot of people who have listened to your podcast. They've learned some valuable lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So what impact has it had for you in your business?
Well, one, I'm on here. Without the podcast, we would not be connected right now. I wouldn't be coming up to Gutty's soon. And was it November?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, in November. Yeah. So like just something like that. I've gotten booked on several gigs just through the podcast, and like several different comedy festivals through the podcast, and networking, which is crazy that out of all these episodes I've done, like a number one common theme is like your network. Like the people you meet are really the ones that are going to create the success. It's not your manager or your agent.
That's true.
It's your friend that you were doing an open mic with 12 years ago that's now the writer on this TV show. Like, it's all about the people you know, and this podcast has given me kind of like a bridge to people I wouldn't normally know or have a connection and a relationship with. So it's that's why I think you can leverage your own podcast, your show that we're doing right now, to connect with comics that otherwise they may not even respond, but you're like, hey, I want to have you on my show. And comics are of course like, well, of course they do. I'm the chosen one, of course. Let me come bestow my wisdom to you children.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say this about you're talking about network.
Mm-hmm.
I say it all the time. Your network will determine your net worth.
Mm-hmm.
That was also on it seems like it's pretty much overall in every single comic that experiences it, because I saw that was the first time I heard that was on the interview you had with Alton Walker.
Mm-hmm.
And he shared that, and that was like what?
Yeah.
Because now that I'm opening up my own comedy club, all my buddies that I worked with before, I'm calling them up and they're doing the show. So it's like there's so, like you were saying, 10, 12 years later, if you keep that network together, you'll eventually, have opportunity. And so it's huge.
And networking with like-minded people as well, in terms of surrounding yourself with people who want to be successful. Because in comedy, a lot of it is, some people may just go for the hangout, or they go just to get drunk, or they don't really have professional aspirations beyond just hanging out in the bar on a Tuesday. So it's also networking with people who are also motivated and working towards something that you can work towards together.
Oh.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Looking back at, you said 200 some million episodes that you've done.
He can't hear. Dennis can't hear.
He can't, bro.
When you look back at those episodes, what do you think is the best piece of advice that you have gained from hosting the podcast?
Oh, there's so much advice.
It's true.
I mean, I would say the networking piece because, but I already said it. So I will say that doing the work, like all the successful people I've interviewed, none of it came by accident. Like no one just stumbled into an opportunity. They got opportunities because they were prepared, or they had been working hard towards it. Some people, it takes 5 years. Some people it takes 15 years to get whatever that break, 30 years even. But all the people I know along the way, even if it's 5 years, like Caleb Synan, for instance, he booked Conan like less than 5 years into comedy. But in interviewing him, I learned that, he's emailing bookers like every single day. And he didn't just stumble into that. He's been actively seeking out that opportunity, and he put in the work, and it paid off. So there's no shortcut. People, especially in comedy, are like, what's the secret? Or how do I get to cut the corners? But What I've mainly learned is it's all you got to put in the work. You can't outsmart the work.
Well, and I think that comes back to clear understanding that show business means you've got to do some business. If you're going to be able to do the show.
Exactly, and it's two separate jobs. I think Marshall Childs, the owner of the Laughing Skull here in Atlanta, that was his big quote. He was like, as a comedian, you have two jobs. It's the show and the business, and you've got to be good at both.
So, when you look at where you are right now in your comedy career, what are some goals, some dreams? What are some plans that you have as you look down the road a year or two or tomorrow? What is it that Joel Byars wanting to do to take himself to the next level? Yeah,
from a podcast standpoint, I want to start getting the podcast more integrated into like festivals. So this year I made it my goal to get into 3 festivals with the podcast. I've done 2 and I have a 3rd one booked in September. So we did that, but I mean, I want to get it into like Just for Laughs and take it to the top and become like Steve is saying, like this comedy mastery platform that everyone is like gravitating towards. So on the podcast end, it's getting more integrated into festivals. Part of my 5-year plan is to have Hot Breath at Just for Laughs within 5 years. And on my performance end, like my stand-up end, it is having my own tour where I'm headlining and also doing like a live podcast. So if I'm at a club for a weekend, maybe that Saturday afternoon, I'm doing a live interview or something within my weekend. So the podcast is always in tow, but personally, I want to be headlining my own tour within the next 5 years.
Yep, that's so. Now, how was the comedy game show? How was that experience? That was very interesting.
Oh, it was so much fun. Yeah, that one was something so many people had told me I need to be hosting a game show. And then the opportunity just kind of popped up at Laughing Skull to host this game show that I approached them with it, but I knew they were looking for like different unique show formats. So I did it, and I've loved it. It exercises a different muscle because you're hosting and you're incorporating the audience more, and you're playing games, and it's just another fun way to perform without just doing straight up stand up.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I could see that traveling. I mean, I could see that as a format that could expand beyond just like a single venue. Right. But I haven't given it much attention outside of that yet.
So out of all of the interviews you've done, who's the biggest jerk?
Who's the biggest jerk? There's
besides the Rican.
Besides it, yeah.
Besides
there's only really, out of all the episodes, there's really only 2 experiences that come to mind that I was just like, really? And the first one was literally like one of the early ones, and he wasn't even a jerk. This just taught me that you're running a show here. People are taking time out of their busy days to be a part of this show. So make sure you set all the parameters up front, all the expectations. Hey, we're going to be doing this for 45 minutes. I don't really give people talking points that we'll be doing, other than it's just for like comedy game, Mm-hmm. So the one that comes to mind was Rodman, in terms of he had won Last Comic Standing the year before, and he's from Atlanta, so I interviewed him as well in addition to those 10. And what's great about that episode taught me a lot, also because when I first reached out to his management, because you book people different ways. Sometimes it's social media, sometimes it's in person, sometimes I go through management. Like, it's all different ways. His management at first said no, and then I followed up after doing a few interviews. I probably just reached out unprofessionally too. I was probably like, hey, I got a show for Rodman. And then I reached back out with like a press kit. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what the show is. Here's who I've already interviewed. And then they said, yeah, of course. So we did a phone interview. And 30 minutes in, Rodman was just like, how long did I allot this time? Yeah. And I was like, it completely threw me off. And I was just like, I don't know. And he's like, yeah, I think we good here. And I was like, oh, okay.
I don't know. Are tired of listening to this podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking to you.
So it was a lot of good lessons and just, to take this time seriously, and understand that this is a production. This is a guy who just won Last Comic Standing. He's probably has a lot going on. He's probably done a lot of press. He just kind of did this as a favor to maybe even Atlanta comedy is how I framed it. And it's still probably that only moment where I was just like, oh, whoa. Okay, we're ending this because the guest wants to leave. And the other one, Kurt Metzger, I sat in the lobby of his hotel for maybe 2 hours before he came down. And it turned out like, he's like, okay, I let him know I was there. He's like, all right, I'm on the way down. And then, all right, give me 20 minutes. And then it was literally like 2 hours. And we ran out of time. We were going to do it in the lobby. We ran out of time. We had to go do it at the comedy club. So I wanted to get all the time I could. So I'm recording it on the way to the club. I'm driving them to the club, asking them questions. And that was probably the only one. Like the Rodman one wasn't really, it was more just me not being professional. But that interview with Kurt, we got a lot of good stuff in the interview, but it was like, I'm sitting here 2 hours. But that's part of building and that's part of the grind. And Kurt even admitted, like, the first question I asked him, I was like, so are you just late to everything? Because he was late to, like, the shows even. Like, the feature would be in the middle of their set, and we're like, there's still no headliner. I don't know. I think they threw up guest spots on one show because he just wasn't there yet. But he did say he is, like, compulsively late and he said, like, my therapist calls it such and such. So, like, he was self-aware about it, but I was not aware about it until 2 hours later. But you live and learn from those experiences,
Right.
So, let's do the flip side of that.
Mm-hmm.
Who has been your favorite interview you've been able to do? One maybe one that you learned the most or you just enjoyed the most? Who do you think was your best interview so far? I mean, besides me.
Of course. Oh, of course. Man, the best interview, I will say the interview that really told me, okay, you're onto something, was the Bo Burnham one. Wow. Because his people reached out to me. Like, I got an email one day asking, saying Bo Burnham was going to be in town and asking if I would be open to him coming on the show. And I was like, wait, this isn't... I honestly didn't think it was real. Like, I thought it was like some spam. And I kind of did a feeler. Like, I just kind of responded. I don't remember what I said, but it wasn't like too committal. It was just making sure I didn't get a bot response back.
Right.
And they were serious. And they set up a private screening of his new movie that I got to go watch with a couple other media people. And then we did like a 45-minute interview. And that was the first time someone's reached out and like, you have a great platform. Can our guest come on to it? So the fact someone like Bo Burnham was reaching out, I was like, okay, you're on to something here.
That's dope.
That happens all the... Oh, wait, no, it doesn't. I was going to say...
Not yet.
Not yet. Thank you, Steve. Jeez, Dennis over here, man. You got to keep him on track, Steve.
Oh, I'm trying, bro.
You guys are in business together. Come on. Not yet.
Not yet.
Mm-hmm.
So... You had something.
I had something. Keep going. I think it's working. You're rubbing off me, man. This whole forgetful stuff and getting old. You
guys are adorable.
I don't know what that means. He just said we were adorable. That came
That's
off.
what's up, bro.
That came off a little creepy, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
Because I haven't been called adorable in. I've been married 23 years.
Work that out.
Anyway, let's take a look at Joel on the comedy side of things, not the podcast thing.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about how you write and produce your comedy. What's your writing style? Are you a pen and paper guy? Are you a computer tapping it? Are you talking on the phone and send yourself messages type of guy? What's your system for writing comedy for Joel Byars?
My system is definitely pen to paper. I create a set list before every single show. I do most of my writing like ahead of time. I still, over time, I've been doing this almost 10 years now. So I do find jokes on stage. But what I have found is that if I write beforehand, then it helps me to find jokes on stage. If I just go up there and I'm like, oh, I'll figure it out, it's nothing. I end up just rambling and just trying to filibuster pretty much. So even if I'm writing and I don't get anything, it helps me on stage. It helps me to find things while I'm on stage. But I'm definitely a pen to paper guy. That's how I started, and that's how I've just continued to be.
So, do you have a crew? Do you have a friend or somebody that you bounce ideas off of, or are you kind of a solo where you write and then you go in to an open mic or someplace and work your material out and come back and rewrite and do the editing on your own, or do you have a crew of friends that you kind of bounce stuff off of?
Well, what I've actually started here in Atlanta is a writing club where we'll meet up as comics and perform for 5 minutes and then give each other 5 minutes of like collective feedback, kind of like a writer's room. So that's been very helpful. And it took me a long time to be a little more extroverted in terms of bouncing jokes off of people. So this year is really my first year of being more proactive in working out material with other comics and just say, what do you think of this? And just spitballing that way. A lot of it is also, though, recording my set and then listening to it afterwards and taking notes that way. I always, or almost always, at least find a new idea by listening back on my set. It's the worst. Listening to yourself, listening to your sets, yeah, and I think it hurts so much because we know it's so helpful. Like, it's one of those things where, like, I don't wanna, and you're like, it's literally like the most helpful thing you could do is listen to your set. So I would highly recommend any comics listening to this have the discipline to record and listen back on your set.
That's good.
You got anything yet?
Not yet, man.
Okay.
Got anything yet? Steve's just the eye candy of this show.
Look.
I just know if I don't ask
We need viewers. We need subscribers. So because it can't just be Dennis. People are like, nah, that's an old dude. We don't want to watch him.
I just know if I don't give him a chance to ask something, then we'll be done with the interview, and they'll be like, dude, do you?
Yeah, come on, man. What you got, Steve?
So. Let me ask you this: how do you get away with doing hot breath? As the Joel Byars thing all by yourself. I mean, wasn't it? You didn't get somebody like court ordered to have some Puerto Rican sit next to you?
Oh my gosh!
I wanted to know how you got away with it.
I'm jealous. It's so much work. It's just I've gone through stages with people. In terms of working with them, I'd worked with an audio engineer. I tried working with a video guy.
Yeah.
It just all came down to inconsistency, and like people just ended up not being reliable. That's really what it boiled down to. So I do want to have a team, and I'm excited when that happens, but it just hasn't been time yet. So it's still just been a one-man band. So if you see any of the interviews on YouTube or you see them, like hear them on iTunes or Spotify, it's pretty much me is how it's boiled down to. But it's a lot of work, but it's a labor of love, and that's really, I'm telling you, man, when Steve reached out to me that first time, it was kind of like the Bo Burnham moment where I'm like, oh, I'm on to something. If someone feels compelled enough to reach out and say how they feel about the show, then it's worth the 10 hours it took to create that hour-long podcast.
Yeah. You do know that by you giving him all these props, you're going to get a bill from him in a little bit.
This guy
want some of the sponsorship money or
something.
No.
He don't know. Look, I'm rocking, dude. I got the socks, bro. So he don't know.
Yo, exactly.
I'm saying I got the socks. I've been there. I know what's up. So he ain't got. He don't know nothing, man.
He's not in the culture yet.
Nah.
If he stole a pair of your socks, the next thing hey, Joel, can you send me a pair of your underwear, Joel?
No, man, get off.
I don't know.
Get off. No, but that's good, man. When did you first? Okay, here's a question. I got one.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, let's pause.
Shut up.
He's gonna forget. Don't cut him off.
Trust. Oh my God. So, when did you first decided? You know what? I want to pursue after comedy. Like, when did you say, okay, this is what I want to do? Because a lot of the guys that we talk to, some of them are just doing they're just saying, I don't know. They don't know yet whether or not they're gonna, they should pursue a career in comedy, or whether that's what they want to do. So it's like they're very back and forth on their decision. And so I wanted to know when was that moment, that point where you're like, you know what, I want to do comedy.
Good question, Steve. That one question outranks all of Dennis's questions.
He's gonna want your underwear and
he's gonna want a tattoo.
You know it.
That's yeah. I mean, that's a really important moment for all comics. That like what is that moment to actually start pursuing it? And mine came senior year of college. It was second semester, senior year of college, and I was about to graduate with a business degree, and I was like, do I really want to even do that? Mm-hmm. And after I gave it some thought, I was like, well, I mean, you have nothing to lose. Sally Mae has everything else, so might as well just try it. I did an open mic, and then as soon as I did that open mic, it was kind of like I took the blinders off, or I took the blue pill or something. All of a sudden, the world was just clear, and I was like, oh, this is what I was born to do. Mm-hmm. It was always in the back of my mind of I would like to do comedy, but it's just not realistic. Yeah. As soon as I did it, I was like, yes, this is it. And then it was like another 6 or 7 years before I actually made it my full-time job, though. So, it's deciding to pursue it. Okay, congratulations. Now you're living at open mics for X amount of years until you can get enough bookings to then make it your full-time job.
Jumping from that to full-time is a big deal, too.
I need to back up. Yeah. Did I understand it right that you, Joel Byars, took some type of comedy Viagra? Is that what you said?
This guy.
Comedy Viagra?
You said something about you took some blue pill.
Dennis was so excited about that joke. He heard me say blue pill, and he's like, I'm going to hold on to that. And when he shuts up, I'm going to say this Viagra joke, and we're going to kill him.
Now you know what I got to deal with.
I'm sorry. I'm in a bit of a roasting mood. I was just editing Rich Voss's episode.
Yeah.
And he is like the roast master.
Wait, I saw those clips that you posted up there that he roasted those guys in the at the interview with who was it?
At Nikki Glazer's show.
Oh my gosh, he roasted those guys.
He's a savage. He's a savage. So he's been doing 35 years, and he came up with Patrice and Colin Quinn and just like the OGs of the comedy world. So I kind of had to stay on my toes around him, because at any moment, he would be like, "Oh, Joel, by the way, did you get my number?" And I'd be like, "Oh, no." And he'd be like, "All right, good." And he just like walks away. He would do stuff like that. But he was always looking to like pull the rug out from underneath you. So after editing it I was editing it like an hour ago. So now I'm like in that roasting mode. So don't take it personally, Dennis.
No.
The good news
Please
is
roast them.
the good news is unless I go back and watch or listen to this episode of the Pops and the Rican show, I'm gonna have forgotten.
Cool.
So,
good to know.
That's great news.
Just don't forget you booked me in November. Please
Right.
don't forget that date.
Man, we're on it, man.
Steve won't let me forget that.
Nah.
He's like, "Oh, we gotta have him come through the club because he's
gotta
gonna
go through.
he's gonna bring my underwear to me."
This guy.
What's wrong? What's this?
See,
So
he started
excited.
it. Like, why? I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm excited.
Okay, so I do want to make sure that we're doing all right on time, because I know you have another response.
Oh, we're good. Yeah, we're good right now. Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to what you find funny, where do you glean your material from most often? Is it when you're just out and about and you're paying attention, or are you sitting down and coming up? Okay, I'm gonna lay out with a premise, and then I'm gonna go through a whole process of squeezing the life out of the premise and strangling it to death, and then trying to revive it. So how do you go about finding and grabbing a hold of material?
Well, I always open up myself to receive the material. Like out in my everyday life, I'm not necessarily going out and talking to someone and trying to look at every word and like, is that a joke? Is that a joke? Is that a joke? Like I don't get that kind of compulsive about it, but I do keep my mind open to the opportunity for a joke to approach me, or to be mindful of funny moments. Or if I say something in conversation that's funny, just think about, okay, what did I say? Was it how I said it? Or was it just the timing of the moment? Could that be on stage? Like I will go through that checklist. And if it's something I think is noteworthy, I'll text it to myself. So that's usually how the ideas will start, is it's from conversation or just my everyday life. Like if when I had a job as a dishwasher, I wrote jokes about being a dishwasher. I am married with a dog. I have jokes about being married with a dog. I mean, my number one filter is just to make it personal, and I want to make sure I'm creating material that only I could say. I don't want to create a bit that someone in Canada could repeat it and it still be just as funny. I want to make sure I'm creating material that is really uniquely mine. And that's easier said than done, and it's a process that I am still continuing to kind of cultivate. But I have found in all the interviews I've done and all my connections with people at shows is they always come up after about the personal things, and like, oh, that reminds me of my aunt, or yeah, my wife replaced me with our dog too. It's like those are the things that people connect with. So that's really where my focus is like what's personal and how can we make it funny.
So what's Joel Byars do when he's not doing Hot Breath and when he's not doing comedy shows? What's life like in your world when you're not on stage, man?
You mean like my civilian life? Is that I mean, I'm fortunate that like stand-up comedy is my full-time job, but if I'm not doing comedy, it's pretty much like family. It's like family and comedy, and it's become more of a balance, in terms of I'm not booked this weekend, so I know I'll be with my wife more. So I've been out pretty much every night this week, out at shows. If I'm booked on the weekends, I may stay in a night or two during the week to get that balance. It's a healthy balance. But when I first started, it's literally I lived on stage. It was just me, like out on the grind, living in a studio apartment. I was at a show every single night of the week. And if I wasn't performing, I was at least watching a headliner at a club. And it's since evolved into like the balance between family and comedy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think if you can explain just a little bit, like maybe expound on the transition from just going to, open mics and getting on stage and working to full time. Because I know that jump from that to that, everybody thinks that it's a quick jump. Oh, I'm just going to jump in it. But there had to have been some planning in between to get to that place. So it's like, did you save up for like 7 months? Did you, like what was it that that allowed you to say, you know what, now I'm ready to go full time?
Yeah, that's such a pivotal moment. And I just interviewed an Atlanta comic named Sam Gordon, who she's been doing it 5 years, and she's at this tipping point on when to jump and when not. So that's a really good interview for people to want to like dive headfirst into, okay, I've been doing this, I'm producing some shows, when do I make it my job? And for me personally, it was a gradual process. So I saved up, I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, saved up money, and then gradually, and by saved up money, like you said, a game plan, I made it my goal to save $10,000. And I was like, okay, if I can save $10,000 at this job, then it's worth the risk for me to quit the job. Now, I didn't go full-time comedy right after quitting Enterprise. I then became like a dishwasher and like a hotel minibar attendant. So I gradually worked my way into comedy, taking less money over time, but these jobs with less money gave me more time to pursue comedy. I know some people have just jumped head first and they're like, I'll figure it out. Or, Jeremiah Watkins just moved to LA and he's like, I'll figure it out. So everybody has a different process. Mine was definitely the more strategic of, okay, let me save money and then slowly eat away at that money until I'm now like a full-time comedian. It's a process, though.
Yeah.
We've got a friend, Jerry Goebel, comedian here in the Indianapolis area, and it's funny because he talks with younger comics all the time, and he always says, if you need to have a side hustle, so you can pay your rent and you can pay your gas bill to get to and from your gigs. He said the thing he looked at was he wanted to find jobs that he didn't care about, he wasn't in love with, because he didn't want to get so much enamored with them so that he felt like, oh, I really can't afford to let this job go. So he was doing jobs that he's like, if he goes into the boss and says, hey, I need off this weekend because I got a gig in Nashville, and the boss is like, no, you have to work. He's like, well, see ya. And, his focus was, I'm going to do something to support my comedy habit,
Yeah, and it's valuable. A comic, I remember Jared Harris on the podcast talked about how important it is to have some sort of other income. It's not necessarily you're going to a cubicle every day. Maybe you're selling stuff on eBay, or you're doing something to not put all that pressure on your comedy, So because if you're like, oh, I need this gig or else, if you start to squeeze it, then you're gonna start to suffocate it, and then that's when you stop getting the opportunities. So I highly recommend comics have more than one stream of income. Even having 5 small streams add up to a big overall income. Not big, I mean a livable income.
Yeah.
So definitely, if you put too much pressure on, I got to make comedy work or else, then a lot of times it suffocates it, and then the opportunities aren't available. It's weird how that relationship works, but I have found that the more I tried to force it and the more I just tried, this has got to be it, the less I got. But as I've started to let go, that's really when everything has started to pour in, when I was just like, all right, let go, and then the opportunities started coming to me. You just got to trust.
I know when you think about it, you look at all of the the big stars that are in the movies or whatever now, and you go back and you talk or you listen to interviews with them, and they all talk about, okay, when I decided that I was going to go into acting, you know, I was waiting on tables, I was, you know, I was washing dishes, you know, and so if the stars of the movies and TV, if they're doing that, why do comics think that there's some magical thing that's going to happen where they just one day they go, okay, I was working as an insurance salesman, now I'm doing comedy. You know, it is a process. You've got to find that way to build the business side of comedy so that you can afford to step away from the connection to that daily job, so that you can change your daily grind from going into an office to your daily grind of mastering the craft of comedy.
Yeah, and give it some thought when you do make that decision. I made like a pro and con list. So before I quit that job that was giving me like the primary income, I made like a list of the pros and cons of like, okay, what is the best case scenario? What is the worst case scenario? Am I willing to live with the worst case scenario? And the pros far outweighed the cons. And it's something in your head, you're like, yeah, I'll just do it. But when you actually write it down, it kind of gets it out of your head and it gets you above it. So it kind of gives you a new vantage point of, okay, here's actually what the reality of what I'm thinking is, and this is what's at stake. Are you willing to do that? And after it really became clear when I made that pro-con list, and I was like, oh yeah, literally like right after I did it, I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly the right decision. But it took me making that pro and con list to really take that step with confidence to know that, okay, you're out in an open mic at 2 a.m. on a Thursday, but it's worth it because I've made this like goal, or I have a reason for doing this.
You got anything else?
I'm good.
Okay, well.
This is great. This is great.
Nice.
Well, Joel, I want to thank you for taking some time to sit down and hang out with us.
Yeah.
It means a whole lot more that you took time to hang out and talk to me, because I know you're a super fan over here. You know, you already had some relationship going. Oh, we already love Steve. So
such a hater.
So thanks for taking time and letting an old partner like me sit in and actually have part of the conversation. But
well, you made this happen. So you reached out and asked about doing the show, and you booked me at Gutty's on November 23rd and 24th. So you're important too, Dennis. You're important too.
Yeah.
And that's because Steve keeps saying, if you don't work, then you don't get fed.
You don't eat.
And
you don't work, you don't eat.
True. Closed mouths don't get fed. And I should say that was November 22nd and 23rd. I said the 23rd and 24th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to be exciting, man. I can't wait just to have you on the show. And it's going to be great to have you on, and really appreciate that you're going to roll out, man. It's going to be fun.
I'm very excited, yeah.
Well,
you have another one in.
Do you have any parting words of wisdom, some wisdom that you want to share with us before we wrap this show up?
Do your show right.
I think we've talked a lot of comedy game in this episode. If your listeners want to learn more, Hot Breath Podcast. I mean, that's really, it's literally, like Steve said, it's become a comedy mastery platform. We have a website to make it even easier. I realize I want to like make this for comics by comics, and I'm really building it as like kind of a community now. And any topic you want to know, you can literally go to hotbreathpodcast.com, and there's a search feature at the top. You can type in any comedian you think that you'd be interested in hearing an interview with, or just any topic, if it's writing or if it's business. You can just search it, and then it'll pull up all the relevant episodes and blog posts about that specific topic. If you want to work with me directly, you can message me through Hot Breath Podcast website, or joelbyerscomedy.com is my personal website that has like my performance schedule and like booking information and just more about me and the comedy services. I mentioned I do like Skype sessions with comics and other people. So just if you want to get at me directly, joelbyerscomedy.com, or the podcast is hotbreathpodcast.com, which is, of course, also on iTunes and Spotify and YouTube. We do video as well. So wherever you find it, just let's hang out.
That's what's up.
And so when you get on, you're checking out Hot Breath, any of the podcast videos, or whatever. Just look over in the corner because Steve will be sitting over there.
This guy.
Yay! Okay.
Hey, it's important. That's how this grows, though. Like, I'm not even kidding. It's literally people like Steve that have built this into what it is. Because most people that reach out to me are like, oh, my comic friend told me about this show at an open mic. Or he posted the episode on his page and I saw it and now I've gone down this whole wormhole. It's my favorite is when people reach out and say they listened to one and then they went like this entire wormhole and they're like, I'm addicted. So it really is. I think Dennis is just jealous because he didn't find it first, but it really is the people like Steve who have really built this into like a reputable podcast. So don't let Dennis deter you. Keep going, Steve. We need you.
That's what's up.
Well, and I will say this, in all sincerity, I try to be a perpetual student. I know I'm old, but you can still teach an old dog new tricks from time to time. So I listen to Hot Breath quite often. And in fact, I spent 7 hours. I had to drive over to Des Moines for an event, and so as I was driving across Illinois, I was like, I got nothing else to do. Let me learn something from the wisdom of Joel Byars.
Oh my gosh!
So,
wow, that's about to bring a tear to my eye. Oh man!
About 6 hours, 6.5 hours of that drive, listening to Hot Breath episodes.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible! Thanks for sharing that.
Real. Like it's number one. The first thing I say, especially when I'm talking to other comics, I'm always like, if you want to know anything about comedy, you jump on Hot Breath. It's gonna get you everything that you need as far as like understanding everything. And that's real. That's just real, hands down. I'm not do whatever Dennis is talking about. What I'm saying is, I know that being a comic and sitting in your car going, where am I gonna go? I don't know what's going on. I don't know who to talk to. And then you find it, and you're like, everybody in this, and every single episode is just like me. I'm telling you, when you find your place and you find it's amazing. So I appreciate your show, and I appreciate everybody else that's gonna jump on. Trust that we'll do our best to network big time.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on here. I'm excited that you're starting a podcast because, like, kind of how we started this with the value it's added to my own career. You guys not only being comedians, but also comedy club owners, like a lot of comedy clubs aren't taking advantage of this platform. And I think you guys have a real advantage if you just stay consistent. If I had one recommendation, it's stay consistent. If you say you're posting at Monday at 8 a.m., make sure you're posting every single Monday at 8 a.m. Or if it's every other week, whatever schedule you decide, make sure you're consistent with it and you're transparent with the audience that if you're going to miss a week, just let the audience know. Don't leave them blind. People, I'm telling you, man, I've missed a week and people reached out to me like, yo, what happened? Where's the episode? Your listeners care so much. It's like literally like a personal relationship. Like I recently posted a Mark Normand episode, and I was like, oh, if they let people like that one, let me post this old Joe List episode I did. And I didn't specifically say it was an old episode, and a listener tweeted me and was like, hey, we don't care if you post old episodes, just let us know that it's an old episode. So, like, I'm dead serious. People care that much, and if you care that much, early on, you're going to create that habit to where it just becomes part of the DNA of the show. So be consistent and transparent.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
We appreciate that advice, and I will throw this out. If you get a chance, on the next, I don't know, the next 20 Hot Breath episodes, if you could mention, hey, I was on the Pops and the Rican show.
Of course.
Check out the Pops and the Rican show, because that Pops, man, that guy.
I'll definitely be shouting out Gutties too, because I'll be up there. I'll promote the show.
Yeah, man. We appreciate it, man.
Well,
yeah, we need to hurry up because Depends over here is about to piss his pants.
I feel you. He's getting a little squirmish. It's cool.
You know, like, come on, man.
good news is we're recording in my house. So if I
got to go. Yeah, I get it.
Right. That's why it's a leather couch, so nothing will stain. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, Joel, thanks for taking some time with us. We appreciate it, and we do appreciate the effort and all that you do with Hot Breath.
Yeah.
It is it's enjoyable and an education for both of us. And I know Steve has given you all of the smoke up your skirt and all that. So I want to be honest and say we appreciate what you do. Yeah. Keep up the great work, and we're looking forward to having you roll through Gutty's Comedy Club. Because that's Steve's dream. He's had that dream for a long time. When Steve and I first met, he was telling me about it, and so finally he's seeing it come to reality, and we're excited about it. And so we're really thrilled that you're going to roll through at the early parts of the life of a club that's going to be here for centuries to come.
We're going to grow together. It's going to be great.
Young punks like this can go on forever.
I'm excited.
That's the show.
And that pretty much says everything. So this has been the Pops and the Rican show. And I'm still Pops.
And I'm the Rican.
And so
deuces.
Toca la clave, suena el bongo, hazme un tumbao, que el ritmo lo pongo yo.
Pops and the Rican.
Look at this dude. Look at the top of his head. Look at his lips.